As we have already seen that it's very difficult to define the soft skill. It is some individual personal skills which are against or contrary to hard skills, your academic or professional skills. Even it is different from the amateur skills that you may have in singing or playing musical instruments or dancing or other form of amateur skills. Soft skills are very personal, vague, obscure, which cannot be defined by any subject or defined by any particular parameter. People often confuse that soft skills are certain virtues or qualities, personal qualities or virtues. You can claim that these are actually virtues. If we think about our total life in totality, our life, our academic life, our professional life in totality. Now, there are various soft skills, as I have already said, teamwork abilities, leadership abilities, emotional intelligence. All these come under these larger definition of soft skills. Now, right now I will speak about another great soft skill that we all should have. That is problem solving ability. Problem solving ability, as you know, our life requires this. Our whole life constitutes problem. Life without challenge, without problem is not life at all. So, as a student, as an adult, as a domestic person, as a family man or woman, we need to have at different stages, at different time, at different situation, need to have this skill, problem solving. What is problem solving skill? It is a skill to have the ability to solve critical situations and issues within a time or maybe throughout a life. So it's not just an ability, it's a process which you must acquire. You know the process and you must go through the process. Then you will be able to solve problems in your life. Now, let us first categorize problems, then we'll speak about solution or solving. First, we should think about what kinds of problems do we have to face in our life. Now, problems can be of two types, generally speaking. Proximate problems, number one. Number two, sustainable problem. That is, the problem which sustains during a longer time, even during our whole life, is called sustainable problem. What is proximate problem? Proximate problem is limited by time. It is time specific. It needs to solve within a specific time, specific duration. So, in terms of times and duration, we can categorize problems into two types. That is proximate problem and sustainable problem. Now, another way to look at the problems is suggested by David Allen in his book called Getting Things Done. This is the name of his book. David Allen suggests that these problems could be categorized into three types. What are they? Number one, a 2-minute problem or 2-minute task. Number two, time-specific task or time-specific problem. And number three, lifelong task or lifelong problem. So you can guess by the terms, by the names, that 2-minute task means some problems which needs to be addressed immediately, without any procrastination, without any hesitation, without any delay. You need to do something right now. You need to solve the problem right now. So these problems are called 2 minutes tasks or problem. Time specific task or time specific problem is much like proximate problem, as I said earlier. So proximate problems can be, according to time, can be categorized into two types. That is 2 minutes tasks, which needs immediate attention, and time specific. You may need 1 week or 2 days or 3 days or 3 months or maybe 1 year or 2 years. So you need a time bound, time specific solution or to address that issue that you have to face, that you find that it is critical, it is difficult. I will speak about the solution later. I'm just now speaking about the problem. Now, the third category of problem that has been suggested by David Allen is lifelong tasks or lifelong problems. As I said earlier, this can be sustainable problem also, because there are some problems in your life which you can't solve immediately or within a specific time, within 1 year or 2 years. It needs continuous and continual attention throughout your life to improve or to achieve the goal and solve a problem. So it's very hard to define sustainable problem. You may have different kinds of sustainable problems. Suppose you may be at a very difficult socio-economic condition. So if you want to improve that or change that socio-economic condition that you in, that you want to remove and that you want to upgrade yourself, you want to upgrade in terms of your economic status, in terms of your social status, in terms of your academic status, you need a continual attention throughout your life. So these kind of problem which cannot be solved immediately. And there are obviously other problems. Of course, some of the sustainable problems, that is time specific problems, can be classified and subdivided into 2 minutes tasks. Suppose you need to do well in your next semester exam. So it can be time specific or sustainable problem. So you can subdivide these tasks and problems into different 1 day or 1 hour based tasks. Then collectively you will be able to solve the time specific problem. So I will speak about the solution later, but what I am saying that time specific problems can be subdivided into 2 minutes problems or immediate problems. So these are the problems or different categories of problems according to the time you need to solve them. But in terms of nature of the problem, you can define and classify problems of your life or our lives into 3 broad categories according to nature, not according to time. And what are they? First problem is practical problem. The second is systemic problem. And the third is called existential problem. Now first come to practical problem. Practical problem is kind of problem which you need to address immediately. And you know the solution very well. Suppose there is an issue with your mobile phone and there is an issue with your domestic life that you need to buy something immediately. So you know what you have to do. And the solution lies in a practical decision immediately. So this is called practical problems. Now, you can solve the practical problems quite easily if you act. You can go to a mobile repair shop or service center. You can solve the problem. If you need a book, you need a pen, you can go to shop, buy it if you have money. But systemic problem is larger than individual problem. It's not practical. It's very hard, it's very difficult to solve, but you can. If you try to solve it with collective efforts, you can solve also systemic problem. What is systemic problem? Systemic problem is social or institution specific problem. Suppose in your college you don't have library access. It's very difficult. You can immediately solve it by your practical decision. But collectively, with other students, you can write down to your, you can apply to the librarian or apply to the principal of your college, and you can solve that problem after some efforts, after some initiations. So systemic problem is a kind of complex problem regarding to an institution, regarding to a particular society, a particular community, which is not so practical to solve, but you can with your collective efforts and leadership skill. Now let's come to the third category of problem, that is the greatest problem, that is existential problem. It's very difficult to solve. What is existential problem? You know that we exist on earth with our own limitations, with our physical limitations, with our socio-economic limitations. And these limitations are often very hard to overcome. Unless you go through a revolution, you go through French Revolution, unless you go through some political revolution, some social revolution. So, existential problem is about the essential existence of our lives. We often have to accept those problems. But how can we solve those problems? Obviously, psychologists suggest, and spiritualists also, spiritual gurus like spiritual leaders also suggest that you can overcome your existential problem, the problems of your life. Suppose that you are not handsome enough. You can't change that. You can change that existence. It's an existential problem. Obviously, it's a material way to think about life. Spiritualists would suggest that don't think about such physical appearance. So there are multiple ways to tackle the existential problem and be positive and derive positive aspects from your life and make your positive aspects much stronger to overcome the existential problem. So we shouldn't think about existential problem too much, because that would be psychologically very difficult to overcome. But you can, with your spiritual guidance, with certain psychological advisories, prescriptions, you can overcome existential problem. But this is the most difficult one. So now, so far we have spoken about different kinds of problem according to the time or according to the nature of the problem. Now we'll speak about solution, that is solving, how to solve problems. Now there are two ways to solve problems according to experts, according to especially psychologists. First way to solve a problem is scientific thinking. If you want to solve a problem, you should go through 4 steps according to scientific thinking or scientific problem solving effort. First step, you have to identify and subclassify or subdivide the problems into smaller problems. This is the first step. Then you need to collect information after certain research. Research means I want to say certain deliberations and pondering and thoughts about that problems, about those problems, multiple problems which you have divided. So collection of informations, correct informations, obviously, you need to acquire, you need to collect. This is the second stage. The third steps is the vital steps. You have to decide. You have to take decisions logically, critically, and obviously scientifically to the problems, or to those problems, the divided, subdivided problems. This is called also hypothesis. You must hypothesize what could be the solutions, scientific solution or logical solutions of those problems, to those problems. So this is the third step. And the fourth step of scientific thinking is obviously testing. You need to test your hypothesis. Suppose after a lot of research, you think that you need to solve 3 problems, see, divided problems. And you also have thought about 4 possible solutions or hypotheses. You need to test all those solutions. And after testing, you will be able to know which solution is the most suitable solution and scientific solution among those 3 or 4 solutions in your hypothesis. So testing, as we do in a scientific lab or research facility. So these are scientific process to solve a problem. But today, lot of organizations and in fact multinational organizations or government organizations are recruiting candidates who obviously have scientific thinking, but they also require something more. And that something more is based on emotional intelligence that I have spoken. And that ability is called creative thinking. You need to solve your problem through creative thinking, not only through scientific thinking. Obviously, you need to have that scientific thinking ability to solve your problem. But to solve a problem, you also need to think creatively. This is the modern multinational companies and organizations, institutions require, and they in your interview in future you will face a lot of questions relating to your ability, creative ability and creative thinking ability. So you need to pay clear focus and emphasis on this particular aspect, that is creative thinking ability to solve life problems or the problems in your life, in your academic life, in your professional life, in your domestic life. Now, let me clarify what is creative and how to achieve creative thinking ability. Now, according to experts, creative thinking ability goes through 3 stages. These stages may not be sequential, but you need to have these 3 steps taken by you. First of all, brainstorming. This is called by psychologists brainstorming. This idea of brainstorming was first suggested in 1939 by, I think, Alex F. Osborne. His name is Alex F. Osborne. He said that he worked in an advertising agency. He was an executive, and he suggested to his team members that all of you must go through a brainstorming session. And what is brainstorming session? Brainstorming session is very popular today. Brainstorming session, in order to brainstorm about certain problems, you need to simplify your problems. Suppose you have multiple problems in front of you. You have 10 or 15 problems. You have to simplify those problems into much simplified way, 3 or 5 problems. So simplification of the problems is the first step of brainstorming. And then you have to give complete freedom to yourself and to all the team members to suggest whatever they think to be the possible solutions of a problem. they should not be, or you should not be under any restrictions, any hesitation. So complete freedom to suggest or to say what could be the solutions is the great idea, is the greatest idea of brainstorming session. So by brainstorming within yourselves, you can achieve critical thinking ability. That is, you must be liberal, you must be very free and frank to yourself in your thought process to suggest multiple ways, multiple solutions. You not be obstructed by time, space, prejudice, tradition, history. You should say whatever you feel. So you should give greater freedom to your emotional intelligence, your emotional faculty. Number 2, that you should have if you want to solve a problem creatively, and that is called mind mapping ability. What is mind mapping ability? It's very simple. Suppose you are attending a class of a professor in your college or university. During the lecture, you can write down the whole idea of the lecture, the whole content of the lecture into a diagram. And within the center, you have the main topic of that lecture. And then you can write down whatever you think to be the most important points of those ideas, like branches diverging out from that main topic, from the central topic. So mind mapping is like, suppose you have a problem in your hand and you can suggest different possible solutions out of that central problems. This is called mind mapping. All you need is just a pen and a paper and write down freely without any hesitation on the paper. So this is called mind mapping. The third stage, I think it's very important to have critical thinking ability if you want to solve a problem creatively. And that is called contra thinking. Contra thinking is also called counterfactual thinking. What is this ability? According to psychologists as well as philosophers, this is a combination of psychology and philosophy. You need to think or suggest some alternatives which are against the real facts or real events of your life. Suppose something had already happened, but now you suggest that if we had done that, it could have been different. So these are contra or counter to the facts of the reality of the present moment. But you need to think reverse in terms of time. That if I did that, if we did that, this could have been different. The result could have been different. So by thinking in these imaginary, unrealistic ways, you can also achieve creative solution to a problem, a critical problem that you have in your hand. So I have spoken about the classifications of problems and also how to solve the problems in different ways. Obviously, the solution should be based on the nature and on the type of the problem that you have in your hand. Now, this ability can be considered a virtue because many people lack this problem solving ability. They just go on with their life without acquiring this skill or without being conscious. Of course, we have to some extent this ability. From our childhood, we acquire some problem solving abilities. But the more we will grow, the more you will grow in your academic life, in your student life, in your adult life, in your real life. You will face more critical problems in your life. And that's why you need to be prepared academically, professionally, for the future problems that you may have to face. So this is not just about academic, this is not just about your semester exam, this is not just about achieving good score, this is about life, this is about your career, this is about the whole society, because you are part of that society. So all these I have to say about problem solving ability. I will now discuss about my next chapter.